Welcome back to the reading of the Mahabharata by Kamala Subramaniam. Chapter 21. The Tournament. Drona thought that the time had come when the prowess of his pupils should be exhibited to all the people in the royal household and to the citizens of the city. He approached Bhishma with the suggestion. Dhritarashtra was also there. They accepted the idea with enthusiasm. By all means, said Bhishma, let the display be arranged. The king requested Drona to arrange for the erection of the stadium. On an auspicious day, Drona had the work begun. It was built in a very short time. The stadium was an immense creation. It was wonderfully thought out. The stage was at the center. On either side of it were provided seats. On one side, provision was made for the seating of the members of the royal family and other guests from neighboring kingdoms. Seats were separately provided for the women of the royal family. On the opposite side to this were built galleries of immense size to accommodate the citizens. On the day of the tournament, the sun shone bright. The place was already filled with the spectators, millions of them, all crowding to see the feats of the sons of the Kuru house and other houses too, who had been trained by the greatest of archers, Acharya Drona. Everyone was eager. Everyone was excited. Some talked about the duel with the mace which was to be fought between Duryodhana and Bhima. Some talked about the great exhibition of feats of Arjuna with the bow and arrow. Some spoke disparagingly of the Acharya. They said, Arjuna is the favorite pupil of Drona. In fact, it is to show him off that Drona has arranged this big tournament. All the others are to be but foils for Arjuna. Others said, no, that cannot be. Why? There are so many others who are as good as Arjuna. It is to let Bhishma know that all the princes are proficient, that Drona has arranged this. The people from the royal household began to arrive one by one. Bhishma, with his white beard gleaming in the sun, entered first. Kripa followed him. The king and Gandhari, led by Vidura, entered next. After that came all the other ancients of the Kuru house. Then followed the guest kings. They were all seated. The people were all eagerly awaiting for the princes to appear. The noise that arose from that assembly was like the roar of the ocean when the full moon is riding in the sky. There was a crescendo of noise, and it ceased as if by magic. The people craned their necks to see the stage. Dressed in pure white, with his grey hair lending dignity and grace to his personality, Drona entered the stage. He was accompanied by his famous son, Ashwatthama. Vyasa was there too to watch the proceedings. The king honored the two preceptors, Drona and Kripa. Brahmins were chanting the Vedas. The scene was indeed impressive. One by one, the princes entered the arena. They were led by Yudhishthira, who was the eldest. He walked up to the acharyas and saluted them one by one. They were dressed in the accepted garb of warriors. They stood aside after the salutations were over. Bows were bent, and the place resounded with the sound caused by the twanging of the strings of so many bows. The exhibition had begun. The princes performed amazing feats with their bows and arrows, swords, javelins, and all the weapons that were commonly used in warfare. The spectators were all watching the show with breathless interest. It was fascinating for them to see the young men and the ease with which they handled the many weapons. There followed a fight with the mace between Duryodhana and Bhima. They were both proficient in the art of wielding the mace, and the duel was watched very keenly by all. Vidura was all the while sitting by the side of the king, giving a running commentary of the proceedings. The duel was going on. Some were on the side of Bhima and some were on the side of Duryodhana. Drona was watching carefully. He knew the hatred between the two princes. When he thought that the fight was more intense than was necessary, he spoke to Ashwatthama. He said, "It seems to me that this fight is getting too spirited. It's not just a display of their skill. People have begun to take sides. Go and separate the two and bring the duel to a close. Let us not have unpleasantness on the stage today." Ashwatthama went quietly to the stage and parted the two combatants who were unwilling to give up. The Guru's commands, however, had to be obeyed. With their eyes reddened with anger, with their looks full of wrath, the two young princes parted. Drona then asked Arjuna to appear on the stage. Arjuna looked beautiful as he made his appearance. He was wearing an armor of gold. He held the bow in his right hand. The quivers full of arrows were strapped to his shoulders. His fingers had leather covers to protect them. There was a deafening cheer from all sides when he ascended the stage. The king heard the noise and said, "Vidura, what is that noise? What do the people want?" Vidura smiled and said, "Arjuna, the handsome son of Kunti, has ascended the stage. He is the favorite of all. Look at him." Looking at him, the crowd has become excited. He's being cheered. The heart of the blind king was burning with jealousy, but hiding it, he spoke words of sweetness, praising the sons of Pandu. Kunti had already seated herself with the other ladies of the royal house. She was happy to see her sons excel themselves in all the feats. Looking at Arjuna, tears of joy filled her eyes. She felt proud that she was the mother of this beautiful, powerful young man. Life in Hastinapura had made her forget her past miseries to a certain extent. Now that her sons were grown up, her old worries gradually went out of her mind. She lived for her sons and was happy in their happiness. A few years had lulled her into a sense of security. She felt that her sons were safe, that nothing would make them unhappy, or her for that matter. Nothing would make them unhappy, she was sure of it. Arjuna and his brothers were the favorites of the people. Arjuna pleased the crowd with various feats of the archery. Everyone was convinced that there was no one equal to him in the use of bow and arrows. His skill was clearly evident. The arrows poured out of his bow like drops of rain, now one by one, and now all together. They could not be seen. So swift was their flight as they coursed through the air. It was a fascinating sight. When all were absorbed in watching Arjuna and his dexterity, the people were startled by a sudden noise. It sounded like the clap of thunder. The earth resounded with the roar. The noise came from somewhere near the gateway. Duryodhana and his brothers turned their faces towards the direction from which the sound came. Has a mountain fallen? Is the sun suddenly coming down to earth? Is the sky suddenly filled with huge black thunder clouds which are bent on destroying the earth? Such were the thoughts that came to the minds of the people. The entire face of the assembly was now turned in the direction of the sound, like a cornfield blown in one direction by a steady breeze. Duryodhana stood up with the mace in his hand, surrounded by his 100 brothers and the others. Like Indra surrounded by the lesser gods of the heavens, Arjuna had to stop. All the 5 brothers turned their eyes towards the gateway. The crowd was making way for someone. In a moment, a path could be seen. Someone was approaching. He came nearer. He walked like a lion. The crowd looked on, amazed at the sight of a man who looked like a god. They heard the noise again. It was the twang of the bowstring of this newcomer. It was Radheya. With his kavacha and kundala glowing golden in the evening light, he strode to the stage with the grace of a panther. He approached Drona. After saluting him, he addressed Arjuna in a voice compelling as the rumbling of a thundercloud. I have come to challenge you. You seem to be too conceited with the skill you have displayed so far. I can do all that and much more too. If your guru permits, I will show you. Radheya repeated all the feats with which Arjuna had so greatly impressed the assembly till now. It would have been a conquest for Arjuna, a complete conquest, if this intruder had not stepped in. A smile of sardonic amusement lit up the face of Bhishma when he saw the chagrin writ on the face of Drona. Duryodhana's face was touched with love for this stranger. Arjuna was overcome with anger and humiliation. Yudhishthira looked disturbed by the prowess of the newcomer. Radheya had finished his display. He now challenged Arjuna for single combat, not knowing he was challenging his own brother. Arjuna retorted, "Who are you that dares to come to this stage uninvited to flaunt your bravery?" Radheya smiled scathingly and said, "This is a tournament, not a private show arranged for your benefit. It is common to all. Everyone is welcome to show his prowess. I'm challenging you. Are you able to accept the challenge, or will you admit that I'm the better archer?" Arjuna, with a disdainful shrug of his manly shoulders, prepared himself for the fight. A strange sight was seen. The sky was suddenly filled with dark blue rain clouds. It looked as though Indra had appeared to protect his son. The sun, however, poured his warm rays on the newcomer. It seemed as though he wanted to protect his son. The scene was indeed beautiful. Radheya stood bathed in the light of the scene, and Arjuna was in the shadow of the black clouds. The spectators were taking sides. The sons of the king were on Radheya's side. Drona, Bhima, and Kripa on the side of Arjuna, the Pandava. Just before the fight could begin, there was a sudden confusion among the women. News reached Vidura that Kunti had fallen down in a faint. Just a few moments before this, she had been so happy. The sight of this glowing young man with the kavacha and kundala must have given her a shock. She remembered the day she set the child afloat on the river. She had said, "In the distant future, I will see you someday. I will recognize you by your kavacha and kundala." He had come, and she knew that he was her son. When she saw her sons vying with each other for supremacy, her heart went through a great agony. Nature, always kind, granted her merciful respite for a few moments by making her faint. Vidura rushed to her, sprinkled perfumed water on her, and revived her. But Vidura, with his power to see into the past and future, knew everything. He spoke to her by signs alone. He spoke words full of concealed meaning, and with his eyes indicating that he wanted her to keep silent. He was trying to comfort her and help her to bear this new pain. She looked at her two sons, and grief was burning her frame. From that moment, she knew no peace or happiness. Her life became one long eternity of pain and anguish. The two young men were getting ready to fight. With their bows bent, with frowning foreheads and eyes red with anger, they glared at each other. Kripa came up to the stage and said, "Let us observe the rules for fighting a duel. This Arjuna, the Pandava, is the younger son of Kunti. He belongs to the noble house of the Kurus. You, young man, must now announce your father and the family to which you belong. Please announce to the assembly the kingdom which is fortunate to have you as their master. It is the rule that only those who are equal in rank may fight one another. No prince can fight with his inferior. Radheya's head was bowed down like a lotus drenched in dew. Duryodhana sprang up from his seat like a king cobra, uncoiling itself. He spoke impassioned words. My lord, ancient dharma has it that kings are of three kinds. They're kings by birth, they're kings because of their bravery, and they become kings when they defeat another king. Bravery, my lord, is not the birthright of Kshatriyas alone. You can get fire out of flint and also out of water. Bravery is universal. If, however, this Arjuna is bent on making fetish of the rule that only a king must fight a king, he shall have this wish. We will crown this young man the king of Anga, which is now without a master. They can fight after that. The people stared at the entire proceedings with amazement. This regal gesture of Duryodhana held them spellbound. There were tears of pride in the eyes of Bhishma. Well done, was the cry which resounded from one end of the stadium to the other. Everyone was watching Duryodhana with bated breath. The prince, with the permission of Bhishma and Dhritarashtra, sent for sacred water and other things necessary for a coronation. They were brought immediately. Brahmins were chanting the Vedas. Duryodhana placed his own crown on Radheya's head and his own sword in the right hand of Radheya. Radheya was given the coronation bath by the Kuru prince. Duryodhana now said, "You are now the king of Anga, stranger. Arjuna, he is now more than your equal. Fight with him, and let us have the pleasure of watching you." Radheya's eyes were raining tears. His voice was choked with emotion. He said, "My lord, I do not know how I am to thank you for this great honor you have conferred on me. I do not think I deserve it. How can I repay you? How can I show my gratitude?" The noble Duryodhana smiled and said, "Young man, whoever you may be, your noble qualities deserve not only this small kingdom of Anga, but much more. You seem to be fit to rule this entire world. As for us, we do not want anything in return for this small service of ours. I want your love. I want your friendship. Duryodhana wants your heart." Radheya smiled through his tears and said, "My heart, that, my lord, you have already annexed." Duryodhana approached him with his body drenched with holy coronation bath and his eyes wet, and with even more holy tears of gratitude and love. Radheya approached the noble Duryodhana. The two friends embraced each other. The moving scene touched the hearts of all. What a great prince, what a noble gesture. Indeed, it is but fitting that a scion of the noble house of Kurus should have done what he has done. A prince indeed, said all the people of the city. There was some commotion in the crowd. An old man was walking slowly towards the stage with the help of a stick. Radheya rushed to him. It was Athirata, his father. Radheya fell at his feet and placed the crown at his feet. The old man said, "Radheya, my child, I am happy to see the good fortune that has befallen you. Praise be to the great and noble prince Duryodhana." Everyone knew now that Radheya was a Sutaputra. The Pandavas, who were silent till now, allowed themselves to smile scathingly at this upstart. Bhima said, "Listen to me, you're a Sutaputra, and not fit to be even killed by Arjuna. You're not fit to hold a bow in your hand. Get thee thence and take up the whip, which will suit you better." Radheya was touched to the quick. His lips were throbbing with anger. That was only the indication of his feelings. He stood silent and mutely lifted his eyes to the sun who was his chosen God. The sight sent a shaft of pain through the heart of poor unfortunate Kunti, that he should look to his father for sympathy without knowing him to be his father was too much for her. Salty tears drenched her mantle. Duryodhana sprang up. He looked like a wild elephant bent on destroying a lake full of lotus blooms. Like a cobra spitting poison, he said, Bhima, you're a prince high-born. These words you spoke now are not fit to be spoken by a prince. Bravery, as I said before, is not the heritage of Kshatriyas and only Kshatriyas. For heroes and rivers, the source is of no importance. Think of all the birth of all these great people. It is usually obscure. The great fire, Bhadava, is found in the waters of the ocean. Think of the birth of our preceptors, Drona and Kripa. Think of the birth of your father and mine for that matter, and that of our uncle Vidura too. Think again of your noble selves. The world knows that you are the sons of your mother and not of your father. You're all the sons of a woman who thought fit to take 3 lovers. Stop this inane talk of yours. As for this young man, full of qualities that are found in a Kshatriya, and only in a Kshatriya, can you not see that a tiger can never be born of a poor meek deer? Can you not feel that he must be a Kshatriya? I have made him the king of the Angas, but I know that he deserves much greater honor. He deserves to be the lord of this entire earth. He is born to be great. You are not good enough or great enough to recognize him. I do not care who he is or where he comes from. He is a hero. He will live with heroes. Now, ask your beloved Arjuna to fight with him if he dares to. Duryodhana's words were applauded by everyone. The son, pleased perhaps with the honor heaped upon his son, wended his way slowly and smilingly towards the west. The tournament, which began so very dramatically, ended in an equally dramatic manner. Drona and Arjuna were the 2 people who were unhappy at the turn of events. The end of the day found everyone talking about the newcomer and the great prince Duryodhana. The feats of Arjuna were forgotten by everyone. They were stale. For him, the great tournament had ended in a fiasco. Torches were lit. The tropical night descended like a pall on the place, enveloping all. In the light of the torches could be seen the 2 friends, Duryodhana and Radheya. They walked on ahead of the procession, their arms clasped, their eyes full of love for each other. The others followed them. Bhishma was still smiling, his covert and amused smile. Drona looked crestfallen, walked thoughtfully behind the others. Vidura looked so sad and so very serious. Radheya had appeared as a dangerous comet in the sky of Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira saw clearly that there was no one equal to Radheya in greatness, in skill and in archery. Yudhishthira was worried. Till today, he had felt secure in the knowledge with the strength of Bhima and the power of Arjuna. They were superior to the Kauravas, but now there was no longer that assurance. Yudhishthira could not be sure that the Pandavas were invincible. This pact between Duryodhana and Radheya was disturbing to his peace of mind. Arjuna's brows were knit in annoyance. Bhima had his fist clenched. He was still smarting under the insulting words spoken by Duryodhana, words for which he had no retort, since they were true, every one of them. The Pandava brothers left the stadium, depressed. With that, we come to the end of another chapter, chapter 21, The Tournament, from the Mahabharata, by Kamala Subramaniam, here on Storytime with Rajesh. More later. Stay tuned, and I'll see you soon. Ciao.